Lions Nation, take a deep breath because what we saw this season goes far beyond numbers and stats. Wearing this jersey has never been about things coming easy. It's always been about building, patience, and identity. And that's exactly what Tyreek Williams' story represents in this moment for the Detroit Lions. Early on, nothing came instantly. Not much noise, not many flashes, that adjustment period that only people who truly understand football know how to respect. But while many were focused only on the box score, something much bigger was being built on the field: foundation, strength, game recognition, and presence in the heart of the defense. As the season went on, it became clear we're not talking about an empty project, but a real structure being put together piece by piece, the same way this franchise has always done it when it gets things right. This is the kind of player who grows with the team, who fits the Detroit versus everybody mentality, and who can shape the future of this defense. So lock in, support the channel, smash that like button. Here we go, Lions. As the weeks went by, Williams settled into his role inside the defensive front. The game began to slow down for him, and you could see the adjustments taking hold snap by snap. By the time Detroit closed out the season, Williams was playing some of his best football, punctuated by his performance against Chicago, where he recorded a tackle for loss and knocked down a pass in the Lions' win. Those are the kinds of plays that don't always dominate headlines but tell you a lot about a defensive lineman's growth, awareness, and confidence at the line of scrimmage. When you zoom out and look at the full season, the workload itself is significant. Williams played in all 17 games as a rookie, earning 10 starts along the way. That alone speaks to the coaching staff's trust in him, especially in a rotation-heavy defensive line. Statistically, he finished with 18 total tackles, 8 of them solo, added 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack, and 3 quarterback hits. But one of the more intriguing parts of his profile was his ability to disrupt passing lanes, finishing the year with 4 passes defended. For an interior defensive lineman, that's a subtle but valuable skill, showing awareness, timing, and active hands at the line of scrimmage. Williams himself has been very open about how his progression happened. Over the course of the season, he leaned heavily on the veterans around him, absorbing advice not just on technique, but on how to prepare, how to approach each week, and how to carry himself as a professional. That learning curve is often invisible to fans, but it's a critical part of why players take steps forward. By his own admission, taking in that guidance translated directly to better play on the field as the season went on. Now, heading into the next phase of his career, Williams is already pinpointing where he expects and demands more from himself. During locker cleanout, he made it clear that affecting the quarterback has to be the next leap. He acknowledged that while he won some pass rush reps, he didn't do it at the rate he expects of himself. That self-awareness matters. According to Pro Football Focus, Williams logged 1 sack, 3 quarterback hits, and 17 total quarterback pressures while playing 40% of the defensive snaps, totaling 446 snaps on defense. For a rookie interior lineman, that's a solid baseline, but it also highlights the room for growth, especially as his role potentially expands. The belief in Williams inside the locker room is real. Veteran defensive lineman Roy Lopez didn't hold back when talking about what kind of talent the Lions have in their young interior presence. He pointed to the rare combination of size and athleticism, emphasizing that players built like Williams simply aren't common. Lopez also highlighted something just as important as physical tools: confidence. Williams knows he's good, and that confidence, especially in a young player, can accelerate development in a big way. Hearing that kind of endorsement from a veteran who's lined up next to him carries weight. All of this context becomes even more important when you look at the bigger picture of Detroit's defensive line heading into the offseason. With Roy Lopez, DJ Reader, and Levi Onwuzurike all headed toward unrestricted free agency, the Lions are staring at potential turnover along the interior. That reality places even more importance on Williams' development going into year 2. The expectation is clear. Detroit is going to need him to take a significant step forward and help anchor the middle of the defensive front alongside Alim McNeill. This isn't about hype or projecting something that isn't there. It's about following the natural progression of a first-round pick who showed tangible growth over the course of his rookie season, earned trust through availability and snaps, and now enters the next year with a clearer understanding of what it takes to make a consistent impact in the NFL trenches. The Lions are counting on that leap, and the structure of the defensive line may depend on it more than many realize. Given everything we've seen and everything that's at stake heading into next season, how do you feel about Tyreek Williams being counted on to take that year 2 leap and hold down the interior of the Lions' defensive line? Because when you project forward from what Williams showed late in the season, the conversation naturally shifts from patience to responsibility. This is where expectations change. Year 1 was about learning, surviving, and earning snaps. Year 2 is about ownership of the position, and the Lions' situation up front makes that impossible to ignore. With multiple interior defensive linemen headed toward unrestricted free agency, the margin for error shrinks, and the importance of internal development grows exponentially. Williams isn't just a young player anymore, he's part of the plan. What stands out is that his rookie season wasn't built on one hot stretch or manufactured production. It was built on availability, gradual improvement, and trust. Playing all 17 games as a rookie interior lineman is not insignificant. That kind of durability matters in the trenches, especially for a team that asks its defensive linemen to rotate, stay fresh, and play with consistent effort. Those 446 defensive snaps weren't handed to him by accident. They were earned through preparation and steady reliability, even when the stat line didn't scream dominance. The flashes, though, are what fuel belief. The ability to knock down passes at the line of scrimmage points to timing and awareness that can't be coached easily. For passes defended from the interior suggests a player who understands quarterback tendencies, throwing lanes, and how to disrupt plays without necessarily getting home for a sack. Pair that with his willingness to acknowledge where he fell short as a pass rusher, and you're looking at a profile that aligns with growth rather than stagnation. Williams' own words matter here. He didn't deflect responsibility or point to circumstances. He identified pressure on the quarterback as the clear area for improvement. That tells you he understands what separates solid interior linemen from difference makers. Winning pass rush reps occasionally isn't enough at this level. Consistency is the currency of the NFL, and Williams knows the standard he's chasing. 1 sack and 17 pressures are a starting point, not a ceiling. The locker room validation reinforces that trajectory. When a veteran like Roy Lopez speaks about a young player's size, athleticism, and confidence, it carries more weight than outside praise ever could. Confidence, when paired with humility and work ethic, often becomes the catalyst for the biggest jumps between year 1 and year 2. Lopez didn't just describe Williams as talented, he described him as someone he's excited to watch grow, someone he'd be a fan of. That's not empty talk inside an NFL locker room. Now, place Williams next to Alam McNeil and think about what the Lions are trying to build defensively. Interior disruption changes everything for a defense. It shortens throwing windows, forces quarterbacks off their spots, and makes life easier for edge rushers. If Williams takes the anticipated step forward, the Lions don't just replace departing production, they potentially upgrade the position with a younger, more explosive presence who understands the system and has already been battle-tested. This is why the upcoming season feels pivotal for him. It's not about projecting star status or putting labels on a player too early. It's about recognizing that Detroit drafted Williams to be a long-term pillar in the middle of the defense, and the early returns suggest that timeline is still very much intact. The rookie growing pains didn't derail him. Instead, they sharpened his focus and clarified what needs to come next. As fans, this is the moment where patience turns into anticipation. You've seen the foundation, the flashes, and the mindset. Now the question becomes whether that translates into consistent disruption, more pressure, and a stronger interior presence as the Lions reshape their defensive front. And there's another layer to this conversation that can't be ignored when you really think about how the Lions approach team building. Detroit has shown, time and time again, that they value development just as much as acquisition. They want players to grow within the system, to understand the culture, and to evolve into leaders rather than constantly patching holes with short-term fixes. In that sense, Tyleik Williams represents exactly the type of investment this organization wants to cash in on now. What makes his situation especially interesting is how quiet his progress was nationally. He wasn't a weekly headline, he wasn't piling up sacks, and he wasn't making viral highlights every Sunday. Instead, he was doing the work that often goes unnoticed unless you're watching closely, occupying space, learning leverage, understanding blocking schemes, and slowly improving his timing and hand usage. Those are the building blocks of a reliable interior defensive lineman, and they usually show up in a big way only after a full offseason of refinement. This upcoming offseason is critical for Williams. A full NFL strength and conditioning program, another year of film study, and a deeper understanding of opposing offensive lines can completely change how he looks on the field. The jump from knowing what to do to reacting instinctively is massive, and that's often where young linemen unlock real production. When the mental side catches up to the physical tools, pressures turn into hits, and hits start turning into sacks. The Lions coaching staff will almost certainly challenge him to be more assertive as well, not just doing his job, but dictating terms at the line of scrimmage. That means collapsing pockets, forcing quarterbacks to move, and disrupting timing even when the play doesn't end with his name on the stat sheet. If Williams can do that consistently, his impact will ripple across the entire defense, even if casual fans don't always see it immediately. There's also a leadership component beginning to form here. With veteran uncertainty along the interior, Williams has an opportunity to step into a more vocal, accountable role earlier than expected. Leadership on the defensive line isn't always about speeches. It's about effort, preparation, and setting a standard snap after snap. Young players notice that. Coaches notice that. And over time, that's how trust turns into responsibility. None of this guarantees anything, and that's the reality of the NFL. Development is never linear, and progress has to be earned again every season. But based strictly on what Williams showed as a rookie, the mindset he's expressed, and the confidence his teammates have in him, the path is clearly there. The Lions aren't asking him to be someone else. They're asking him to be a better version of what he already is. As this defensive front continues to evolve, Williams' second season may end up being one of the quieter but most important storylines on the roster. If he takes control of that interior role, it changes how the Lions can operate not just this year, but beyond. Now it's over to you. Let everyone know in the comments whether you believe Tyleik Williams is ready to turn that potential into consistent impact, and how important you think his development is to the future of the Lions defense. And when you really zoom out, this is why Tyleik Williams' second season carries weight beyond just his individual stat line. Defensive tackles don't exist in isolation. What they do, or fail to do, affects every single level of the defense. If Williams can consistently collapse the pocket, even without finishing the play himself, quarterbacks are forced into earlier throws, linebackers get cleaner reads, and the entire structure of the defense functions more efficiently. That's the kind of impact Detroit is hoping for, especially as the roster around him continues to shift. What also can't be overlooked is how rare it is for a rookie interior lineman to play a full season without hitting a wall. The physical toll of playing inside, snap after snap, against NFL-caliber offensive linemen is enormous. Williams handled that grind, and by the end of the year, he wasn't fading, he was improving. That alone suggests his conditioning, preparation, and mental approach are already at a professional level. Those traits tend to compound once a player truly understands what the league demands from them. There's a reason the biggest jumps for players like Williams often come in year two. The guesswork disappears. The speed of the game becomes familiar. Instead of reacting late, players start anticipating. For an interior defensive lineman, anticipation can be the difference between being sealed off and splitting a gap, between getting a hand up too late and batting a pass down. Williams already showed flashes of that anticipation with 4 passes defended, and that's not accidental production. Detroit's confidence in him isn't loud, but it's clear. You don't ask a rookie to play 40% of the defensive snaps across 17 games unless you believe he can handle the responsibility. You don't pencil him into a future role next to Alam McNeil unless you see the traits that fit your long-term vision. And you don't hear veterans speak the way Roy Lopez did unless the player is earning respect every day behind the scenes. Now the challenge becomes consistency, turning flashes into habits, turning pressures into finishes, turning potential into reliability. That's the step that defines careers in this league, especially for players in the trenches who don't always get instant recognition. Williams doesn't need to reinvent himself. He needs to sharpen what's already there and play faster, stronger, and more decisive with every rep. As the Lions move forward and the defensive front takes shape, this is one of those developments that could quietly decide how far the unit can go. If Williams takes that leap, the Lions don't just fill a spot. They stabilize a crucial part of the defense with a young player who's growing into the role at the right time. And that confidence, or doubt, from the fan base is completely understandable because this is the exact point where young players separate themselves. Up to now, Williams has done what a rookie is supposed to do: learn, contribute, stay available, and show growth. What comes next is harder. Now he'll be game planned for. Now opposing offensive lines will have a full year of NFL film on him. Adjustments will be made, and how he responds to those adjustments will define the trajectory of his career in Detroit. This is where the mental side becomes just as important as the physical tools. Williams already has the size and athleticism that can't be taught. What elevates players at this position is how quickly they diagnose blocks, how efficiently they counter when the first move stalls, and how relentless they are across 4 quarters. Interior defenders don't get the luxury of wide angles or clean rush paths. Everything happens in tight spaces, in fractions of a second. Williams showed late in the season that he's beginning to understand that reality and play within it rather than fight it. Another element that matters is trust from the coaching staff. Snap counts are not random. When coaches believe a player will execute his assignment, they keep him on the field. Williams earning 10 starts as a rookie tells you he wasn't just rotating in situationally, he was being relied upon. That trust becomes the foundation for expansion. More snaps, more responsibility, more chances to impact games. And with uncertainty along the interior defensive line, that expansion may come sooner rather than later. There's also an identity component forming here. The Lions have built a reputation on toughness, physicality, and effort in the trenches. Williams fits that profile. He's not flashy, he's not loud, but he's steadily becoming the kind of player who reflects what this team wants to be up front. When young players align naturally with a team's identity, development tends to accelerate because expectations are clear and consistent. It's important to remember that not every cornerstone announces itself immediately. Some are built quietly, rep by rep, season by season. Williams' rookie year looked exactly like that kind of foundation being laid. No shortcuts, no inflated